Miles slid his boarding pass into the scanner with ease, barely glancing up as the flight attendant smiled politely. As the only son of a powerful CEO, he was used to privilege, but he was quiet about it, reserved. His father had taught him to be humble, even when the world tried to judge him before knowing him. Miles, dressed simply in a hoodie and jeans, walked down the jet bridge to find his seat first class, window side, row 2A. But when he reached it, a woman was already sitting there. She was tall, with icy blonde hair, sunglasses still perched on her nose despite being inside. Her purse rested on the seat beside her. She looked up at him slowly, her red lips curling into a smirk. "Sorry, I'm not moving," she said casually. "Find another seat, please." Miles was momentarily stunned. "That's my seat," he said calmly, showing her his ticket. The woman didn't even look at it. "Look, I paid a lot for this flight. I need space," she said dismissively. "Just go sit somewhere else." Before he could reply, the flight attendant approached, sensing the tension. That was when everything began to spiral, because 5 minutes later, the entire flight was halted. The flight attendant, a petite woman with tired eyes, glanced between them. She asked for tickets. Miles handed his over wordlessly. The woman, whose name was Victoria, judging by the sharp monogram tag on her designer carry-on, refused. "I don't need to show anything. I upgraded at the gate," she claimed, but the system didn't reflect that. "Ma'am, this seat belongs to Mr. Miles," the attendant said. That single sentence made Victoria scoff. "Figures," she muttered under her breath, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. Entitlement is everywhere these days. Miles felt the sting of her words, subtle but clear. He had heard them before, said in different ways, and from people just like her. The attendant stiffened. Miles still remained calm. "If you'll kindly move," I said. "I'm not moving." Victoria snapped, and with that, she crossed her legs defiantly. Her heels tapped loudly against the floor. The attendant stepped away to call the head purser. Murmur began spreading among passengers. Some whispered, some recorded. The captain was alerted. Within minutes, the boarding process was frozen. No one else would board until this was resolved. That's when things got deeper than just a seat. As the scene continued, passengers grew agitated. Phones were out. Cameras were rolling. Miles sat on the armrest of a nearby chair, trying not to react. He didn't want trouble. But this was beyond uncomfortable. It was humiliating. Victoria had now begun explaining loudly to a fellow passenger how she'd never seen such entitlement from someone who didn't. To even dress for first class. A businessman across the aisle leaned forward. He was polite. "You're the one making a scene," he said quietly. Victoria turned sharply, glaring at him. "Mind your business." But the eyes were now turning against her. Some flight crew members came back, followed by the head purser. "Ma'am," he said, tone firm, "if you refuse to move, we'll need to speak with you off the aircraft. You'll speak to my lawyer." She shouted, standing now. But it was too late. Miles had become the center of attention, not for his actions, but for the way he carried himself amid it all. Calm still. His quiet strength. His refusal to retaliate only made the contrast clearer. What had started as a seat mix-up was now something far deeper, and the entire cabin could feel it. As Victoria refused to budge, the captain made the rare call. "Halt boarding." Overhead, the announcement echoed. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to a delay in seating arrangements, we ask for your patience." Gasps, groans. Some passengers stood up in confusion, peeking past curtains to see what was happening. All stood too, this time with intent. "It's okay," he said softly to the purser. "I'll take another seat." The purser shook his head. "You paid for this seat, sir. You shouldn't be displaced for someone who refuses to follow protocol." Victoria laughed bitterly. "Oh, so we're playing favorites now?" she sneered, but her voice was shakier than before. Security was called. Not airport security yet, but the airline's private mediation team. That was serious. The situation had escalated beyond expectation. Victoria's eyes flickered with panic as she realized the flight wouldn't leave unless she stepped off. Or something else happened. And then someone in the back yelled, "Let the man sit down already." Applause followed. As the crowd slowly turned against her, Victoria's arrogance began to falter. She reached for her phone and called someone, voice trembling. Miles stayed quiet, but his silence spoke volumes. He hadn't revealed who he was. No one knew that the young man being publicly humiliated was the son of one of the most powerful CEOs in the country, a man whose company owned part of the airline they were flying on. Miles never used his name for attention. But now, a flight supervisor whispered to a crew member, eyes wide. One of the staff had finally recognized him. "That's Miles Carter," she said. "Carter Enterprises Air." The information spread through the crew like wildfire. And suddenly, the energy shifted again. They knew they'd halted a flight over a VIP being denied his rightful seat by a woman who didn't even have a valid ticket for it. The captain personally stepped out of the cockpit. He walked down the aisle, stopped by Miles, and addressed him with a quiet, "Sir, would you like to proceed with the flight, or should we remove the passenger?" Victoria's eyes widened as she turned to look at him. "Wait, he's who?" Victoria stood frozen. "Carter," she repeated. Her mouth moved, but no words came. The captain nodded. "Mr. Miles Carter, son of the chairman of Carter Enterprises. You hijacked his seat?" The word hijack sent a ripple of gasps through the cabin. Passengers now glared at her openly. The calm man she had mocked was not just any passenger. He was the passenger. Victoria began to stutter. I didn't know. I thought he was... I didn't mean." But there was no saving her now. The very people who had once ignored her behavior now shook their heads in disgust. "If it had been me, I'd have been escorted off already," someone whispered from coach. "Only difference is she's loud and pretty." Miles looked her in the eyes. "I don't need special treatment," he said, "but I also won't accept disrespect." She swallowed hard. For the first time, shame flickered in her expression. The head purser returned. "Ma'am, please collect your belongings. You're being reseated or removed, your choice." Victoria's hand trembled as she picked up her designer purse. The aisle was dead silent as Victoria was escorted down it, eyes staring from all directions. Her posture was no longer proud. Her heels clicked like thunder on the carpeted floor. She mumbled under her breath. Something about being misunderstood, but no one cared to listen. The cameras had stopped rolling. She was no longer the spectacle. Miles was. As she stepped off the plane, the captain returned to the cockpit. Miles finally sat in his rightful seat. The passenger across from him leaned over. "You handled that with grace," he said. Miles just nodded, placing his headphones on. But in his heart, something stirred. Not anger, not pride, something deeper. Why was this still happening? The moment the doors closed, the captain's voice came on. "Apologies for the delay. We are now ready for departure." A soft applause filled first class. But for Miles, the flight was far from over. He pulled out his journal, something he always carried. This story, he knew, was just beginning. Just as the plane began taxiing, a soft voice called out from coach. "Excuse me, sir?" Miles looked up. A woman had stood up halfway down the cabin. She was dressed simply a brown sweater, curly hair tucked behind her ears, no makeup. Her eyes were kind but serious. The flight attendant tried to stop her, but she stepped into first class. I saw what happened back there," she said, carefully approaching. That wasn't right. Miles blinked. "Thanks," he said, unsure what else to say. She handed him a folded piece of paper. "You don't know me, and I'm not looking for attention. I just wanted you to know not everyone thinks like that." Then she returned to her seat without another word. Miles unfolded the paper. Inside was a handwritten note. "You showed more class than anyone in first class. That woman represents a world that needs to change. Keep shining." A stranger in row 9D. Miles folded the note gently, placing it into his journal. The words meant more than he expected. Somehow they made the sting of earlier fade just a little. As the plane lifted into the clouds, Miles leaned against the window and closed his eyes, but his mind was far from rest. He remembered being 10 years old when his father first took him on a business trip in the corporate jet. "They'll see your skin before they see your brilliance," his father had warned. So make sure what they see next leaves them speechless. That day had been the start of many lessons. And today, that lesson echoed louder than ever. The humiliation Victoria tried to cause, she didn't even know who she was trying to step on. But it wasn't about ego for Miles. It was about the fact that people like her felt comfortable doing it at all. How many others had been treated like that and just stayed silent? Opened his eyes and looked across the aisle. The seat where Victoria had sat now stood empty. A reminder, a symbol. He pulled out his laptop and began to write. Not a report, not an email, but a story. His story. Black CEO's son's seat hijacked by a white woman, he typed. The headline itself was a storm, but it was real. After a long, quiet flight, the plane touched down. Miles remained seated as others stood, grabbing their overhead bags. He wasn't in a rush. But when he stood to exit, he saw her again, the woman from row 9. She stood by the gate, waiting, as though she'd hoped to speak with him again. "I'm sorry for being bold earlier," she said as he approached. "No, I appreciated it," Miles replied. "Not many people say something when they see wrong." She smiled. I'm a teacher. Or was. I'm in between things." Her eyes were honest. "And you, Miles?" he said. "I'm in tech." "Sort of," she chuckled. "Yeah, sort of," he shrugged. "It's complicated." They walked together to the terminal, casual conversation flowing easily. For a moment, the chaos of earlier felt distant, and Miles realized something. The moment Victoria tried to steal his seat, she unknowingly created the very connection she probably feared most to people from very different worlds, drawn together by decency. Miles' phone buzzed all night. He had no idea that several passengers had uploaded the entire incident to social media. One clip where Victoria said, "Find another seat, please," was now trending. The comment sections exploded. Some supported her, many were furious. And when someone finally tagged him as the passenger in the video, everything erupted. News outlets started calling it, blog sites posted headlines entitled "Passenger Kicks Black Man from First Class, Then the Whole Flight Stops." His name wasn't even in most of them yet. But people began asking, who was the man who stayed so calm? Why did he walk away instead of escalate it? His father called. "I saw the clip. You handled it well," he said gruffly. "But now it's public. You know what that means?" Miles nodded. "Yeah. Time to speak up. Not for attention, but for everyone who doesn't have a last name like mine." The seat hijacking had become more than a personal insult. It had become a conversation the world could unignore. In a shocking twist, Victoria appeared on a morning show 2 days later. She wore soft pastels and dabbed fake tears with a tissue. "I was tired," she said. "I thought the seat was mine. I didn't realize he was someone important." The interviewer raised an eyebrow. "Would it have mattered if he wasn't?" Victoria fumbled. "I mean, it was all just a misunderstanding." But social media wasn't having it. Screenshots flooded the internet. "I'm not moving. Find another seat." The evidence was everywhere. Her crocodile tears couldn't erase what people had seen with their own eyes. Meanwhile, Ada texted Miles a link to the interview with a simple, unbelievable. "She really played the victim card," Miles replied. "Let her play it." Truth already spoke louder, but deep down, he knew something was shifting. This wasn't about him anymore. It was about the world watching. That night, Miles couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about when he was 15, getting stopped at an airport while traveling with his father. He can't be in first class, a security guard had said, until his father pulled out credentials. That moment left a mark, a scar he had buried. But Victoria's act dug it back up. Why were some people always asked to prove they belonged? Why were their achievements seen as luck or charity? Miles didn't want pity. He wanted equity, wanted recognition earned, not granted. He stared at the ceiling, wondering how many others were reliving their traumas because of one viral video. But this time, something was different. People were talking, people were listening, and maybe, just maybe, that empty seat had started a movement. Ada called him the next day. "Weird question. Ever think of turning that story into something more?" Miles raised an eyebrow. "It's like, what? A film? A book? Even a school program?" "I have connections in education media," she said. "Kids need to see what you did. Quiet dignity is strength." Miles hesitated. "I'm not a speaker." "You don't have to be. Just be honest." There was a pause. "You don't have to do it alone," she added. He smiled slightly. "Okay, let's talk." For the first time, the incident didn't feel like just a wound. It felt like a seed, something that could grow. With the right people beside him, and Ada, she wasn't just a stranger anymore. She was becoming the unexpected partner in a journey neither of them saw coming. Miles was in his apartment when the call came. His father's assistant. "He wants you in the office." Now, Miles hadn't spoken to his father face to face since the incident went viral. When he walked into the towering building, Employees stared, whispered, even nodded in silent solidarity. For once, they didn't see just the CEO's son. They saw him. Inside the office, his father sat at his massive glass desk. "You kept your cool?" "I respect that," the older man said. "But that CU didn't just lose it. You gave people a reason to look closer. Our brand is part of the conversation now." Miles stiffened. "So this is about optics," his father paused. "No, it's about impact. I want you to lead our new social integrity division. Make sure this company finally sees what we've ignored." Miles was stunned. "You're serious?" "100%, his father said. "You've got a voice. People listen. Don't waste it." Meanwhile, Victoria's employers weren't impressed by her sob story. The video embarrassed the company. Clients began to drop partnerships. Petitions called for her removal. Finally, she was let go. "Unprofessional behavior unbecoming of an executive," the letter read. She tried to sue, but the video didn't lie. She blamed everyone but herself. "It was just a seat," she cried. But the world knew better. It was never about the seat. It was about who she thought belonged in it. Her downfall wasn't because of Miles, it was because of her own arrogance. Victoria vanished from public view, but her name remained etched online, a warning to others. The seat she tried to steal had become a symbol of reckoning. School reached out to Miles. "Would you speak to our students about resilience and identity?" the principal asked. Miles hesitated, but Ada encouraged him. "You don't need a podium. Just speak from the soul." So he did. He walked into a packed auditorium. Dozens of young black and brown kids stared up at him, some wide-eyed, others skeptical. But as Miles told them what happened on that flight, how someone looked at him and tried to erase his worth, they leaned in. He didn't sugarcoat it. He told them the truth. And when he finished, the applause wasn't loud, it was thunderous. One girl whispered, "You look like my brother. You made me believe he can do anything." That moment meant more than 1,000 headlines. Later that evening, Miles received an email titled, "From 9D. It was Ada. She had watched the school speech live. "You were electric. Not because you were perfect, but because you were real," she wrote. "I've never met someone who turns pain into purpose like that." Miles smiled, wrote back, "You were the first to see me that day when others looked away." That changed everything. Something was happening between them, quiet, unspoken, but undeniable. It started in turbulence. But now, it felt like home. Victoria resurfaced through a direct message. "I want to apologize in person," she wrote. Miles stared at the screen. Was it sincere or another PR stunt? After a long pause, he replied, "I don't need your apology. I needed your respect." That moment's gone. He didn't want revenge. He wanted change. And some people, like Victoria, didn't deserve front row seats to the new version of him. She'd tried to take a seat, but he'd earned a whole stage. A sculptor messaged Miles, "I saw your story. I created something inspired by it. May I show you?" Curious, Miles agreed. When he arrived at the small studio, what he saw took his breath away. A single airplane seat, cast in bronze, but cracked down the middle. On one side, a name tag reading privilege. On the other, a name tag reading perseverance. Plaque read, "Who deserves to sit here?" Miles was speechless. The sculptor placed a hand on his shoulder. That moment, it's eternal now. And it was. Magazine covers, podcast interviews, talk shows. Miles was everywhere. But none of it mattered more than the late-night calls with Ada. Their bond grew stronger. She challenged him, grounded him, loved him, quietly. One night she asked, "Do you ever regret what happened on that flight?" Miles thought. "No, because I found you in the turbulence." She laughed softly, cheesy. "True," he replied. They weren't just building a story anymore. They were building a life. Months later, Miles boarded another plane, this time for a business trip. When he got to his first-class seat, a white man was sitting in it. "Sir, I think this is my seat," Miles said calmly. The man glanced at his ticket, looked up and smiled. "Oh, my bad, you're right." He stood and moved. No attitude, no challenge, just a correction. It seemed small, but to Miles, it was huge. The world was changing one seat at a time. One night, Ada opened up. "My mother was a janitor," she said. "Used to sit outside her classrooms while she cleaned. I always swore I'd be in one, not cleaning one. Miles listened quietly. I saw what they did to you that day, because I've seen it done to my mother for years. I couldn't stay quiet. Miles reached across the table, holding her hand. You didn't save me, but you reminded me I could save others. They didn't just share love. They shared purpose. A letter arrived at the office, no name. Inside, a short message. I was on that flight. I didn't speak up. I'm sorry. You made me realize I need to do better. Thank you. Miles held the letter for a long time. People are learning, he whispered to himself. Not because of punishment, but because of reflection. Sometimes the loudest change came from the quietest corners. The interview dropped online. The flight attendant who tried to de-escalate the situation. I was scared to intervene, she said. But when he walked away without raising his voice, I felt ashamed. That was grace. She choked up. He reminded me that my silence had power too. I won't be silent again. Her words went viral again, not because of drama, but because of growth. Back at his father's company, the board made an unexpected decision. Miles was named Executive VP, the youngest in history. But he didn't smile for the title. He smiled because he earned it through something no MBA could teach: character. You've built something powerful, his father admitted. Not just a brand, but a belief. Miles nodded. Let's keep building. Months later, Miles planned a surprise. He booked 2 first-class seats on the same airline. Same seat, same number. The plane leveled in the air. He turned to Ada. This seat changed my life, he said, but not because someone stole it, because you gave me something better. He knelt down, holding a ring. Will you marry me? Her eyes filled. Yes, she whispered. Passengers clapped. Love won at 30,000 feet. At a school Miles visited, a small boy raised his hand. Why didn't you yell at the lady who stole your seat? The room grew quiet. Miles knelt in front of the boy. Because sometimes power isn't about yelling, he said. It's about choosing how we respond. And I chose peace. That's how we changed the world, the boy smiled. I want to be like you. A filmmaker approached Miles and Ada. Your story needs to be seen. Globally. Together, they created a documentary called Seat Taken. It aired worldwide. People cried, people clapped, people changed. And somewhere, in a quiet home, Victoria watched alone. Maybe, just maybe, she learned something too. Years later, Miles and Ada boarded a plane with their young daughter. She bounced excitedly as they reached their row. Hey, Daddy, is this our seat? She asked. Miles smiled, lifting her onto it. Yes, sweetheart, this seat belongs to you. They sat down. It's the same seat that once caused pain. Now held love, growth, family, legacy. Because no matter who tries to take your seat in life, what's meant for you cannot be hijacked. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you see the world differently, please hit that subscribe button, like, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. More powerful stories coming your way, only on our channel. Subscribe now.